This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Lourdes Gant. You are a small business expert, finance strategist, business coach, and visionary. Lourdes, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Roger. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. And one of the things I wanted to start out with is I wanted to first say congratulations because you just recently started your own podcast several months ago. And I'd love to know a little bit about how that's going for you.
Oh, I'm so ecstatic that I did that because originally I wasn't sure if I was going to do that. I'm always surprised how audio has taken strides, the launch of Clubhouse. But I thought, I'm always on Zoom anyway, so might as well do it. Make the long story short, I launched May 7th. So the Business of Aquaculture podcast launched that day. And 3 months later, I was blown away by how many experts in my industry has said yes to be my guest. And from then on, I got contacts from the Middle East, from Asia, all over the world, who really raved about how they learned a lot from listening from the podcast. I would never have thought to reach this audience if I didn't do it. And so I highly encourage anybody who want to go into podcast to actually do it. It's worth your while.
That's wonderful. What would you say maybe the one big surprise that has come out of podcasting?
I am very much surprised how all of the guest experts that I invited said yes. I am blown away again by, I guess, the generosity of people who I thought would be really busy entrepreneurs, business people, consultants, mentors, coaches, but very generous in actually giving their expertise and time, answering just the questions that I'm asking them, even personal ones. And so I'd really like to thank all of them by doing that, because I would never have thought, managing director or a CEO of a really big company would have no time for even just 15 to 20 minutes to talk to me. But I'm really grateful that they said yes.
And it's so great to hear you say that. I definitely echo that. That was something that always surprised me as well over the years that I've been podcasting is I think people genuinely want to help and they want to provide the information and the knowledge and experience that they have to others. And podcasting is such a great way to do that. And as you mentioned, Clubhouse, that's another new medium that a lot of people are getting into. That's also great for that. But in particular, podcasting, when it's a one-on-one, especially like we're doing right now, it's a great way for people to have some really relaxed time to be able to express their thoughts that they may not have been able to do otherwise.
Yes, but in a way, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I guess it's also not surprising in a way, because you know how they said successful people normally create time. For people who are busiest, they create time for important matters. And so in a way, that cements in my mind, I guess, how much busy I am. I got to really focus on what matters. And podcasting is literally like what you said, what we're doing here is building relationships. And that's always, in the top 3 list of what we people should do is really deepen relationships.
That's so true. Can you talk a little bit about aquaculture? That's a term that's somewhat new to me. I've heard it a few times, but I don't really understand exactly what it is. I'd love to hear in your words, what does it mean?
So it's farming the sea. So, agriculture is you farm the land. So aquaculture is farming the seas. So our business, Sustainable Aquaculture.ca, got started 30 years ago when my husband, who originally was a commercial fisherman, actually harvesting these king clams that we specialize in from the wild. But he saw the devastating impact that the fishermen are doing fishing all these good quality products on the ground. And he realized that this is not sustainable. If the fishermen continue doing what they're doing with this species, is soon going to collapse. And now almost probably at the brink of extinction. So he started his journey in the aquaculture industry. I met him in 2007, and the rest was history. 13 years later, here I am in the sustainable aquaculture space, and I loved every bit of it. I mean, it's, business. Some days it's stressful, some days it's very rewarding, but overall, I think the mission and vision of the company helps, I guess, cement who I am. I mentioned to you, I'm originally from the Philippines, wherein if I have to actually look back, I live in Canada now for 17 years. And if I probably didn't leave the Philippines, I would not ever have a discussion about sustainability, not because we don't do it there, but some of the areas where you're in a third world country, we are trained to be resourceful. We live sustainability just because we don't have enough resources. And so this whole discussion and talks about sustainability is great to hear, because we're in North America, or even probably in Europe, first world countries are now starting to realize that a lot of people has devastated the resources that Mother Earth has given us for free. And so now it's time to take action, wherein let's give back to Mother Nature. But I digress. I guess you talked about aquaculture, but it's along the same lines.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And two very important topics, especially today, as it's becoming more and more important as our population continues to increase. What's a king clam? I've never heard of this.
So king clam, we call it geoducks, and it's from a First Nations word, gohaydak, which means dig deep. The animal is a very large clam and is very famous in Asia because it's listed in the Japanese emperor's list of gourmet foods. But the Asians actually believe that's actually also aphrodisiac. And so it's being served and in Asian restaurants, very high ticket item in Asian restaurants, but it also signifies virility, and also at the same time it's a seafood, so it's a great source of protein. And these king clams actually can live up to 150 years old. And so it has a big shell, and then it has this little skin and neck that looks like a penis for marketing purposes, but it does look like it. It burrows under the sand, and as they grow to 3 to 5 millimeters first when they get out of our hatchery. So, well, let me go back. So the way that we rear them is that we get the broodstock, which are the parents of the clams, and then from the ocean, we bring them to our hatchery, and then we spawn them there. So they are broadcast spawners. So maybe there'll be like 50 million of them. And then we'll have maybe 10 to 20% survival out of that. And then we grow them in our hatchery to reach what we call refuge depth size. So maybe 3 to 5 millimeter, maybe even 10 millimeters. And then we bring them back into the ocean, plant them, and then they just grow there for 10 years. So this is one of the coolest thing about them, but also one of the disadvantage about them. So the coolest thing is, you don't have to feed them. They feed what's food in the ocean, in their ecology. But for business wise, it takes 10 years to grow to market size to 1.8 pounds, 2 pounds is what the market wants. And so it's a patient business. But also at the same time, I'm going to talk in the next while about my 3 pillars of sustainability, leadership, partnership, and stewardship. At the same time, when I talk about my 3rd pillar of stewardship later on, it's more about, I mentioned we're a family business. It's living the legacy instead of leaving it. And so as a family business, you wanted to transfer the know-how, the knowledge base, and the methodology that we're doing to rear these animals. I mentioned to you, I have a 12-year-old, so it's kind of our estate plan.
That is wonderful. Wow. And it sounds like, there's certain industries out there where, it could, whether it's cheese or wine or what have you, that the longer they're aged, the more they're preferred. So but it sounds like in your industry, it actually takes 10 years for them to get to the size where the market would want to purchase them. Is that right?
That is correct. And so just so you know, this length of time is based in the Canadian way of doing things, because they also rear these animals in the United States. And for whatever reason, the ecology in the United States takes them almost only 6 to 7 years, I believe, maybe even 5, so shorter. And I'm just thinking maybe because of the environmental conditions of how we rear them here. But also at the same time, and based on history, our Canadian waters is more pristine. So, and we also do aquaculture these animals differently. We call it subtidal, which is under the water, while in the United States, they do it intertidal. And so intertidally, there's probably more pollution. And so sometimes if you compare US clam and a Canadian clam, you will see from their neck, if their neck is a little bit darker, so the substrate of where they burrow themselves under the sun of water affects the quality of the animals. And the market likes to grade them A, B, C. And so grade A, they are the quality animals. And so they pay premium price. And then grade B and C are lower in quality and also a little bit lower in price.
And where does your company rank in that?
So our company mandate is to create the most environmentally beneficial food production operation on land or sea anywhere in the world. We strive to create the quality products that we believe really serve our company value of being caretakers. So one of our values is caretaking, not only caretaking the company, caretaking the environment. And so we strive to achieve that.
Wonderful. And I don't want to go off on a tangent on this. I'm just interested. One of the questions that I'm thinking about is, you said you put them back into the ocean. How do you claim ownership or rights to where they are?
So in the Canadian way of doing aquaculture, we actually have a leased area from the government. And so we have 90 hectares of what we call tenure, which is basically the area. And right now we've planted 30 hectares of the 90 hectares. And for a selfless, how do you call it? Shameless self-promotion, we're actually looking for investors so that we can expedite the planting of the remaining 59 hectares, 60 hectares. And so this leased area is from the government, and they give us 10, 25 years to lease it. And in our knowledge, nobody has been taken out from their lease as long as you develop and take care of the area. So it's a partnership between the government and industry member to, I guess, caretake of the ocean.
That's incredibly fascinating. And yes, let's put a link. You could send me a link after the show, and we'll put it in the show notes if people want to reach out, because it sounds like a very worthwhile financial and as well as a way to help sustainability for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger.
So, okay, let's dive into your the 3 pillars that you talked about. And first, if you could give us a bit of an introduction of how you got into this other space of your world, where you're actually helping, I believe, mainly women in their personal growth and development. And then, now through your pillars, how you're tying this into your business, or is it completely separate?
So interestingly, that's a great question. Nobody actually has asked me this question, so I like that. So I came from the Philippines, as I mentioned, and I've always been huge into personal development. I started my personal development journey when I was in my early 20s. I don't know if you know the Silva Mind development, but that's what my original personal journey was in, wherein, they trained us how to use the power of the mind. And so I've always been a big believer of, what we see externally in our world is a reflection of what's happening inside us. And so I've gone through a lot of personal development journey. And when I met my husband, interestingly, actually, we met in a personal development seminar called Living from Truth. And then the rest is history. But to go back to your question, coming from the Philippines, a third world country, my family is poverty stricken. And so I have learned how to be always on the top of my game. I got several medals when I was in school. I've always been very ambitious, but at the same time, that's a great thing because it got me to where I am right now. But at the same time, I think I lost myself in that journey, meaning everything was about external reward. Everything was about, a trophy at the end of the year. And so in my personal development journey, I've learned how it's very tough for me to just acknowledge myself for who I am, just because if I don't get a medal, if I don't get an award, I don't get a trophy, I feel like I was worthless. And so this journey into self-worth that I gone through, I realize is not just unique for me. I feel that with the women that I started mentoring, this has been the number one challenge that has been happening because of their drive for ambition. There's a sense of loss because without all these trappings, without all this trophy, then they don't feel like they have the confidence, just, I guess, acknowledging that, we are enough. And so I started mentoring women. Interestingly, my network, actually, I've been mentoring women for almost 5 years now with a group in Barcelona, Spain that I met
Wow.
serendipitously, which is a different story. But make the long story short, I'm still in this journey to this day. I think it's you know, never ending path to self-discovery, self-awareness. And but I started women to, it's okay to feel sometimes to rest, not of overdrive all the time. It's very tough because that has been my training from the Philippines, always like, I can't go work hard and, go get, how do they say, go bring home the bacon all the time. And so my epiphany came when I was actually with my Irish mentor who did a training, and we were hiking in the Andes mountain in Peru. And one of the questions that he asked me was, "Who are you?" And I'm like, I didn't know how to answer that. I was taken aback and in my own, I guess, funny, but also, I guess, ignorant way, ask him, "What do you mean? What's this question? Who are you? Can you give me a multiple choice?" I
Right.
said this to him, and he looked at me like I was some kind of nuts. And I'm like, are you sure that you're asking me the right question of who I am? How do I answer that? Because, probably the the answer that I have in my head would be, well, I'm a businesswoman, or I'm a mentor, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, but who am I really without all those labels? Same thing as, without the awards, the achievements, the medals that I have. And so, make the long story short, this is how I started mentoring women. Was the same journey that I went through. I am who I am. It doesn't have an explanation. I guess once you start to explain that, then it becomes a label. And so labels are very big in terms of when I mentor women, that, you're not a label, you're not what you do, we're not what these trappings are. It is what it is, you know. And so I guess 6 months ago, I had a divine download of sustainability, because that's the sphere that we're in business. And it was 3 a.m, believe it or not. And I started to have this download of sustainability from the inside out. Last year, when the pandemic happens, most of our products that we're selling, our local buyers didn't buy because the restaurants were closed. So our seafood didn't gain as much traction. And so the products, we lost almost $500,000. Local oyster buyers didn't buy, they didn't have the market to sell it to. And so that came both as a curse and as a blessing. A curse because, of course, we lost sales, but as a blessing because now we have to pivot. So I think everybody has learned how to pivot when the pandemic happened last year. And so we decided that we were going to add advisory and consulting to our family business. I mean, my husband has 30 years of experience doing this. I have several experiences from my corporate experience, plus the 13 years I've been into aquaculture now. So combined, literally, we have half a century of expertise of where we're in. So since we're from the water industry, I got this interesting thought of, leadership, everything ends in ship, leadership, partnership, and stewardship. But at the same time, it has also came from, you know, what sustainability from the inside out. And there's a term in the sustainability industry wherein there's greenwashing. Greenwashing is when people are just starting to use the word sustainability because it's good marketing term, because it's a good public relations, and that's not real, right? So we're talking about inside out here, where people have to learn how to use terms very deliberately. The word sustainability for me is sacred. It means it's who we are. Again, going back to the who we are. And if someone starts from the leadership, one of our trainers told us before, the meaning of leadership that I really took to heart. Leadership is doing the right thing even though nobody's watching. And so if people has to start with sustainability, with pillar one of having an integrity, and then working with several people they can trust, or partnership, which is the second pillar is, and they share the same values. And then the third pillar of stewardship should be able to take that big stride that you're doing your sustainability journey from the inside out. So, and then there's, I have a picture of this and I'll send this to you later, but it's basically like 3 circles wherein in the middle is the Sustainable Business 5.0, which I'm going to talk about next. So the coinciding 2 circles of leadership and partnership is the influence, because in this industry that we're in, if you don't have the buy-in of government, you don't have the buy-in of First Nations, or don't even have the buy-in of your clientele, it's gonna get nowhere. And I guess that's very true in any business as well. And then of course there's the merging of partnership and the stewardship as well. And all 3 of these circles, the leadership, partnership, and stewardship, compose of what I call Sustainable Business 5.0. And then I'm going to stop for now. Maybe you have a question about all this. I gave you a spew of a lot of things, and then I'm going to move to Sustainable Business 5.0.
No. What I really appreciate about sorry, are you getting some feedback? We'll do a little timeout. Are you getting some feedback?
I think that is a text. Maybe I should take that out.
Okay.
It's dinging. I'm gonna turn off messages.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what's really interesting is, because I asked the question how you got into this, but what's really rare is that it sounds like this is still part of the overarching business that you've developed out of it. So it still has to do with, the aquaculture. You talked about the water, you talked about, the download that you received and how all of this came together based off of your business. Most people that I talk to or interview, when they have 2 separate businesses, they're completely separate. But what I really appreciate is how everything seems to be all inclusive.
Yes, and I had a coach who called it an emergent. So I mentioned to you, my husband and I work together, and in fact, we actually was influenced by this coach that I talked to you about. They call it emergent. And so my name is Lourdes, my husband's name is Eric. So when we work together really well, there's this emergent entity that emerge, and we call it Desiree. And so people know in our industry that if we both reply as an email, we sign off as Desiree, and they both know it's an amalgamation of both of our minds. So this emergent exists, wherein I was talking about, if you have this real partnership when 2 people share integrity, their trust and their legacy, there's this beautiful emergent that happens.
Wow, Lourdes, we have to continue to spread the word of what you're doing here, because this is so important to our world. It's important to relationships. It's important to pass this on, to our younger generations. And this is something new. I have not heard of this until today. So I'm so happy that we're having this conversation. But I'll let you get into now your Business 5.0. What exactly is that?
So I belong to a group of people who has introduced me to this concept of Society 5.0. And we talked about Japan a while ago. It was actually Japan who started this, I think, in 2019. If my memory serves me right. So Society 5.0, they mentioned, is about having a business and a society wherein it's both high touch and high tech. So just to give our audience a little bit of background, so Society 1.0 was when people were into hunter-gatherer stage. And then it became Society 2.0, wherein it's agrarian. And then Society 3.0, everything was industrial revolution. And then Society 4.0 is there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of marketing funnels in our space, and there's a lot of, when the bug Y2K happened, everything was about the internet. Now we've entered Society 5.0, wherein, a lot of the entrepreneurs who's making a lot of money are into what's called imagination society. So, Jeff Bezos with what he did with Amazon, Elon Musk with what he did with Tesla. And so there's this, again, an emergent of everything that we've done from Society 1.0 to 4.0. If we don't enter 5.0, our business is gonna be obsolete. And so if you're in business and if you're an entrepreneur, make sure that you combine, high impact, high income, high touch, high tech, internet of things versus relationship, having that together. And I talked about an emergent. So literally, this is an emergent of all of the things that happened from 1.0 to 4.0 is the amalgamation of the Society 5.0 now. That's why people are seeing about cryptocurrency. I mean, that's money out of the ethers, that's imagination. And if you're in the arts world, you hear about non-fungible token, how people are tokenizing their art so that their royalty are safe, the blockchain, all of this talk. But you've also seen all these people were in, I don't know if you know Masimoto's son, who has been taking Bitcoin into strides, but also at the same time, people has believed this movement, the movement itself has carried it forward to make it successful. And so in the value cycle of businesses now, there are 5 ladders. So we call this the value cycle, wherein now you need a community to make them your followers so that they can be prospects, and then they become customers before they become raving fans. So gone are the times wherein you believe that you have, like, everybody's into internet now, especially after the pandemic. And so when people talk about before about marketing their products and services online, they will have a funnel. But now you're seeing, interestingly, how you probably already had experience wherein all of a sudden you go to somebody else's website and they have a chat bot that makes it more personalized. And so if you're not using technology to catapult your business to the next level, then there's something missing if you also don't put high touch. People have already seen that. Interestingly enough, I heard this statistics that if you actually have 10,000 people on the top of your funnel and just funnel them, there's probably a likelihood of one person who's going to buy if you just do your normal marketing funnel. But if you're doing a high touch, high impact kind of way of doing things, wherein you actually have a real community where you're offering your products, you had your chatbot, you have your customer service, you even text them. You've seen a lot of text marketing now. From same amount of people that you have, 10,000, you can probably have between 10 to 30 sales if you do so I mean, the difference between 1 to 10 to 30 of the results doing the same activity, just adding a little bit here and there of relationship-based marketing makes a big difference in somebody else's business. So this is now 5.0, wherein it's a new way of doing things. And interestingly, people call it new normal. Just we have to do things differently now that we're in the imagination society. So in my 3 pillars of sustainability, I call this sustainable business 5.0. I don't start talking sustainability, and that's how I started here as well. I started who are we? versus, I'm going to save the planet, have a climate change, green gas emissions, reduce net zero carbon, yada, yada, right? These are lingo that in real life won't make any sense if there's no integrity, which is the leadership pillar that I mentioned a while ago.
Wow.
So there's that whole thing.
Wow. And I just love how you incorporate so many important pieces to everything you just discussed in this 5.0 and everything prior. I mean, I could just feel the sincerity in what you're discussing, and I'm sure that's what the people that you're mentoring can feel as well. And look, I also feel it's our duty as humans to continue to pass on knowledge, wisdom, all these good qualities that we have been fortunate enough to receive through our upbringing or through our knowledge and experience, and then pass that on. And I just want to, commend you and thank you for all the hard work you're doing out there. And so happy we're connected today. But before I let you go, Lourdes, I would like to spend a couple of minutes talking about, you are a recent graduate of David Breyer's Brand Intervention Masterclass. And I was fortunate enough to watch you, go through and graduate through that program. Tell us a little bit about it, what it did for you, and how it has impacted your day-to-day and your future growth of your business.
I am so happy that I took that course, Roger. It's really cemented in my head. I was talking about high trust, high value, and you and David really deliver on this in terms of how you interact with your clients. I am so in awe on how, even I know, again, I mentioned at the start of our call, how busy people create time. I mean, you guys text me out of nowhere somewhere. I mean, some of the courses that I've been through, I've been talking to one of our other graduates as well. I mean, I pay them high ticket items, and after a year or two, they disappear into the ethers. It's like I didn't know them. I mean, after the course, you guys is still continue. We're almost becoming very good friends now, which is,
Yes.
I really value. I really value my social network. One of the things that I knew from just getting into this master class was actually, in fact, my 3 pillars of sustainability launch in the branding master class when I was talking about. And David actually recommended me this new website that I'm developing right now, When the Ship Hits the Fan, which is very, very catchy.
I love it. I love it.
So it's when the ship hits the fan.com is kind of the advisory and consulting part of what I'm doing. But going back again to, the 3 capitals that everybody needs to have is financial capital, intellectual capital, and social capital is very important. Somebody said that, you can, how did they say it? So I'm having my Filipino English mental block, but your network is your net is your net worth, and
Yes.
the number of people you surround yourself with is how you calculate how much value you are in terms of all these 3 capitals. And so I really appreciate what we've learned in the branding masterclass, especially cementing again how that trust-based relationship and authenticity come through in how you do business. And the branding masterclass really exceeded my expectations in terms of that arena.
That's wonderful. What would you say, because I know David likes to talk about your differentiator throughout the program. Was there one thing that stood out that you learned about yourself and your business and your brand that you were able to say, okay, this is our differentiator?
That's a great question. And it brings me back to the emergent that I was talking about a while ago. I think before I was so focused on, I'm going to do my family business this way. I'm going to do my personal development journey this way. I'm going to do this sustainability business this way. So the whole differentiator came to me in such a way that there's no one of this other thing. All of this thing that I'm doing is who I am. It's the emergent, and that my brand differentiator cannot go without one or the other. And so I'm so pleased when you mentioned about, it's not a separate thing. So I'm now literally implementing what I learned during the branding masterclass, that is the main differentiator I had. Is without one or the other, it's not my brand.
Wow. Wow. That is profound. That is absolutely profound. And again, I'm just so happy that we're connected. And I want people to connect with you and go to your website and learn more about you and your business. But before I let you go, Lourdes, I have one last question that I typically ask every guest, but I'm going to put a twist to it today because of something you said.
Okay.
I typically ask, what do you want your legacy to be? But I want to change that today. How do you want to live your legacy?
Well, I'll answer both. How about that? In a
Sure.
very short span of time before we end here. So my life's purpose is enabling revelation for who you are. And my United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is no poverty, because I came from there. And so how I would like to live my legacy would be to be able to share the knowledge and the wisdom that I gained through my journey and share that with people, because without having to share, it's not worth doing. And I mentioned about the 3 capitals, social capital being one of them. One of the things that I like doing is really spreading what I learned. And so if I can spread what I learned from my, I guess, little bit of enlightenment that's available now, instead of, seeking for it, then that means I lived my legacy.
Lourdes Gant, welcome to the American Real family. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I cannot wait to continue to watch all that you do and the business propel, and just really look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you very much, Roger, for having me here. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you.